The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute legal, immigration, or professional travel advice. International travel regulations, visa requirements, and entry protocols are subject to rapid change without notice due to geopolitical shifts, health concerns, and policy updates. While we strive for accuracy, the presenter and the channel are not responsible for any repercussions resulting from the use of this information. Viewers are strictly advised to conduct their own due diligence by consulting official government resources, such as the United States Department of State and the relevant embassies or consulates of their destination countries, and to speak with qualified professionals before making any international travel arrangements. You are standing at the boarding gate at JFK, your suitcase is packed with everything you need for a month in the Mediterranean, and you have spent $6,000 on non-refundable flights and boutique hotels. But when you hand over your blue United States passport, the agent looks at the screen, looks back at you, and tells you that you are not getting on that plane. You are not a criminal. You do not have prohibited items in your luggage. Your passport is not expired. In fact, it does not expire for another 88 days. However, because the country you are flying to requires 90 days of validity beyond your date of departure, your document is technically invalid for entry. This is not a hypothetical scenario. In the last year alone, historical trends show that thousands of American citizens have been denied boarding or deported upon arrival, not because they lacked a passport, but because they lacked an understanding of the granular, shifting landscape of international travel rules. The era of simply showing up with a U.S. passport and expecting a stamp is officially over. We are now living in a world of biometric checkpoints, pre-travel digital authorizations, and hyper-specific health and insurance mandates that can change while you are mid-air. This is the ultimate deep dive masterclass on how to navigate the complex web of global entry requirements in 2026. If you have ever felt overwhelmed by conflicting information on travel blogs, or if you are terrified of the financial and emotional toll of being turned away at a foreign border, this video is the solution you have been looking for. Over the course of this series, we are going to dismantle the complexities of modern travel. We will move past the basic advice and look at the actual systems used by border agents, the secret validity rules that catch even frequent flyers off guard, and the technological shifts that are fundamentally changing how Americans move across the globe. By the time we are finished, you will possess a professional-grade framework for auditing your own travel documents and verifying entry requirements for any country on Earth, ensuring that your only worry when you reach the airport is whether you remember to pack your noise-canceling headphones. To understand how to stay updated, we first have to look at the massive shift in how the world views the American traveler. For decades, the U.S. passport was a golden ticket, but as of 2026, the reciprocity landscape has changed. Many nations have moved toward electronic systems that require pre-approval. Consider the case study of the European Union's implementation of the European Travel Information and Authorization System, or ETIAS. For years, Americans could fly to Paris or Rome with zero paperwork. Now, the requirement for a digital link to your passport has added a layer of bureaucracy that, if ignored, results in automatic boarding denial. This is not a visa but a security screening. Many travelers confuse these terms, leading to catastrophic errors at the check-in counter. This masterclass will teach you the precise difference between a visa-free entry, a visa on arrival, an e-visa, and a travel authorization, and more importantly, where to find the real-time status of these requirements. We also need to address the data regarding passport validity. One of the most common reasons for travel disruption is the 6-month rule. Even though your passport might have a formal expiration date listed, many countries in Asia, the Middle East, and parts of Europe do not recognize that date as the end of your travel window. They require your passport to be valid for at least 6 months beyond your intended date of stay. We will look at specific examples of countries like Thailand and the United Arab Emirates, where this rule is enforced with zero exceptions. If you are at 5 months and 29 days, you are staying home. We will also explore the blank pages requirement. Did you know that some countries like South Africa require at least 2 entirely blank, unstamped visa pages in your passport? If you have a passport full of stamps from previous adventures but no full blank pages, you could be facing an immediate flight back to the United States at your own expense. Furthermore, the rise of digital health portals and mandatory travel insurance is a relatively new phenomenon that has become a permanent fixture in the 2026 travel landscape. While the acute global health crises of the early 2020s have stabilized, many nations discovered the utility of digital tracking and health screening. Some countries now require proof of specific medical insurance that covers a minimum dollar amount for medical evacuation before they will grant a QR code for entry. We will break down how to identify these hidden requirements that aren't always listed on the front page of a travel booking site. We will analyze the historical trends of how these rules are communicated, often buried in the fine print of airline advisories or deep within the foreign ministry websites of the destination country. The stakes have never been higher. A single oversight can lead to the loss of thousands of dollars in airfare, the forfeiture of prepaid accommodations, and the potential for being flagged in international databases, which could complicate your travel for years to come. In this first part of our masterclass, we are establishing the foundation of your travel intelligence. We are moving away from the hope for the best strategy and toward a data-driven, systematic approach to trip preparation. We will examine the specific tools used by the airline industry itself, such as the Timatic database, which is the same system the agent at the check-in counter uses to decide your fate. We will discuss why relying on third-party travel blogs or outdated social media posts is a high-risk behavior that can lead to disastrous outcomes. We are also going to look at the domestic side of the equation. For American citizens, staying updated isn't just about what happens at the destination. It is about what happens at the departure gate. The full implementation of the Real ID Act has changed the requirements for domestic segments of international trips. If your journey starts with a domestic flight to a major hub like LAX or ATL, and your state-issued ID does not meet federal standards, you might not even make it to the international terminal to use your passport. We will provide a step-by-step breakdown of how to ensure your entire travel chain is compliant with current U.S. and international laws. This is not just about avoiding trouble. It is about the potential outcomes of being a truly informed traveler. When you understand the rules, you can travel with a level of confidence that others lack. You can navigate the biometric gates in London, the e-gates in Japan, and the pre-clearance facilities in Canada with ease. You will know exactly which apps to download, which government lists to subscribe to, and how to read a consular information sheet like a pro. This video is your first step in transitioning from a tourist who is at the mercy of the system to a global traveler who masters the system. We have a lot of ground to cover, from the technicalities of the Schengen area to the nuances of transit visas in countries where you are only spending a few hours in the airport. Let's begin this deep dive into the 2026 travel reality for American citizens. To begin your journey into total travel literacy, we must start with the single most important digital destination for any American citizen, which is travel.state.gov. This is the official portal of the United States Department of State's Bureau of Consular Affairs, and in 2026, it has become more than just a website. It is a live, breathing data hub that serves as the gold standard for every rule, regulation, and entry requirement globally. Imagine if you are a traveler named Alex. It is June 2026, and Alex has planned a dream trip to Brazil. Alex remembers hearing back in 2023 or 2024 that Brazil was thinking about requiring visas for Americans, but then he read a headline saying it was delayed. Alex assumes that since he is an American, he can just show up. This is a high-stakes mistake. If Alex had visited the State Department's country information page for Brazil, he would have seen a clear, bolded section stating that as of April 2025, the reciprocal visa requirement is fully in effect. By the time Alex reaches the check-in counter in Miami, the airline agent will use their own internal system to verify this, and Alex will be denied boarding on the spot. This is the reality of the 2026 travel landscape, where outdated information is as dangerous as a lost passport. When you navigate to the country information section, you are not just looking for a yes or no answer on visas. You need to perform what we call a comprehensive document audit. Each country page is divided into specific headers. The first and most critical is entry, exit, and visa requirements. This section is updated in real time by the local U.S. embassy in that specific country. For example, if you are looking at Japan, you will see details not just about the 90-day visa-free stay, but also about the specific types of items you can bring into the country. Historical trends show that Americans frequently run into legal trouble abroad, not for their passports, but for carrying common over-the-counter medications that are strictly prohibited in places like Japan or Greece. The State Department lists these nuances under the Local Laws and Special Circumstances tab. This is where you find out if your specific prescription requires a Yatkin Shimo or a special permit. If you skip this step, you are not just risking a denied entry, you are potentially risking legal intervention in a foreign jurisdiction. Now, let us look at the concept of travel advisories, which are ranked from level 1 to level 4. In 2026, These levels have become more granular. A Level 1 advisory means exercise normal precautions, while a Level 4 is a firm do not travel. But the real complexity lies in Level 2 and Level 3. Take a case study of a traveler headed to certain regions in Mexico or Colombia. While the country as a whole might be a Level 2, specific states or provinces might be designated as Level 4 due to localized civil unrest or high crime rates. Why does this matter for your travel rules? Because your travel insurance policy is often tethered to these levels. Imagine if you book a trip to a region that is currently a Level 2, but 2 weeks before your departure, the State Department elevates it to a Level 4. Many high-end travel insurance providers use these official government designations as the trigger for their cancel for any reason or trip interruption coverage. If you are not monitoring the specific level of your destination, you might find yourself in a position where you are traveling to a high-risk zone without any financial protection or medical evacuation coverage. To avoid being caught off guard by these sudden shifts, you must utilize the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, commonly known as STEP. In 2026, STEP has been upgraded to provide more localized, push notification-style updates through a dedicated mobile interface. When you enroll your trip in STEP, you are essentially telling the local U.S. Embassy exactly where you will be and how long you will be there. This is not about government surveillance, it is about proactive safety. If the entry rules for the country you are visiting change while you are in the air or during your stay, the embassy sends out a demonstration alert or a security alert directly to your email or phone. Case studies from recent years show that travelers enrolled in STEP were the first to receive instructions on how to navigate sudden border closures or new exit permit requirements during regional geopolitical shifts. It is the difference between being stranded at a closed border and being the first person in line for a newly opened transit corridor. Let us expand on the technicality of the passport itself within the State Department framework. We mentioned the 6-month rule, but let us look at the math of 2026. Because passport processing times have fluctuated significantly over the last 3 years, the State Department now recommends that you begin the renewal process when you have at least 1 year of validity remaining. This is due to the potential outcomes of a sudden surge in applications, which historical trends show happens every 10 years as batches of 10-year passports expire simultaneously. If you are planning a multi-country tour, say through Southeast Asia, you might enter Thailand with 5 months of validity, which they might allow on a case-by-case basis if you have an onward ticket, but then try to cross into Vietnam or Cambodia only to find that their 6-month rule is an absolute hard line. You could find yourself stuck in a neutral zone between borders because you did not check the requirements for every single leg of your journey. Furthermore, we need to talk about the rise of the e-visa versus the visa on arrival. In 2026, more countries than ever have moved away from physical stamps and toward pre-approved electronic visas. The problem is that there are hundreds of scam websites that look exactly like official government portals. By using the State Department's direct links on their country information pages, you ensure that you are using the legitimate government site. Imagine if you are going to Turkey and you search for Turkey e-visa on a search engine. The first 5 results might be third-party agencies that charge a 300% markup or, worse, take your passport data and never issue a visa. By following the step-by-step links provided on travel.state.gov, you bypass these risks. You will see the exact cost, usually in the local currency or US dollars, and the exact processing time, which for 2026 is often between 24 and 72 hours for most electronic authorizations. But what happens when the government website itself is not enough? What if you are at the airport and the airline agent is looking at a different set of rules? This brings us to a critical realization. The government tells you what the law is, but the airline decides if you get on the plane based on their own liability. There is a hidden layer of information that governs the global aviation industry, a database that is updated every few minutes and is used by every major carrier from Delta to Emirates. If you do not know how to access the information in this database, you are only seeing half of the picture. You might have a valid visa according to the embassy, but if the airline's database says your document type is not supported for electronic check-in, you could still be blocked. This leads us to a massive open loop. Have you ever wondered why 2 people with the same passport and the same destination can have completely different experiences at the check-in counter? It often comes down to a system called timatic. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to go behind the curtain of the airline industry. I am going to show you how to look at the exact same screen the gate agent sees before you even leave your house, so you can walk up to that counter with the confidence of someone who already knows the answer to every question they are about to ask. We will also dive into the specific biometric requirements that are becoming mandatory across the Atlantic in 2026, and why your physical passport might soon be the least important thing you carry. To understand why you might be blocked at the gate despite having what you believe is a valid travel document, you have to understand the acronym that rules the sky: TIMATIC. This stands for Travel Information Manual Automatic, and it is the single most powerful database in the global aviation industry. Managed by the International Air Transport Association, or IATA, TIMATIC is the same software integrated into the check-in systems of nearly every airline on the planet. When an agent scans your passport, the system is not just reading your name. It is cross-referencing your citizenship, your destination, your transit points, and even the duration of your stay against a live database of international laws. In 2026, the potential outcomes of ignoring this system are severe. Airlines are now facing increased financial penalties, often exceeding $5,000 per passenger, for boarding anyone who is inadmissible at their final destination. Consequently, gate agents are trained to trust the computer over the traveler every single time. Imagine a traveler named Sarah. It is the spring of 2026, and Sarah is flying from Los Angeles to London, with a connecting flight to Morocco. Sarah has her US passport, which is valid for another year. She knows she does not need a visa for the United Kingdom or Morocco for short tourist visits. However, what Sarah did not check was the newly updated Electronic Travel Authorization, or ETA, requirement for the UK, which in 2026 applies to all non-visa nationals, including Americans, even if they are only transiting through Heathrow. When Sarah attempts to check in at LAX, the TIMATIC system flags her profile as document not okay. The agent cannot override this. Sarah is stuck in California while her luggage and her vacation plans vanish. This case study illustrates why you cannot rely on general knowledge. You must verify your status through the same lens the airline uses. To do this, you do not need a special industry login. You can access the public-facing version of this data through the IATA Travel Center. This is a step-by-step process every American traveler should perform at least 72 hours before departure. First, you navigate to the IATA Travel Center website. You will be prompted to enter your passport issuing country, which is the United States, followed by your destination. But here is the critical detail. You must also enter every single transit point. In 2026, many countries have implemented sterile transit rules that differ based on the terminal you arrive in or the length of your layover. After entering your flight details, the system will ask for your residency status and the purpose of your visit. The resulting report is the exact set of rules the airline will use to judge your eligibility. If that report says a digital authorization is required, you know you have work to do. Beyond the text-based rules of TIMATIC, we must address the massive technological shift occurring across the Atlantic in 2026. The full integration of the Entry/Exit System, or ES, in the European Union. For decades, the hallmark of European travel was the physical ink stamp in your passport. In 2026, that tradition has been relegated to history. The EES is a high-tech biometric database that tracks non-EU citizens, including Americans, as they enter and leave the Schengen area. When you arrive at a major hub like Paris Charles de Gaulle or Frankfurt in 2026, you are no longer looking for a human officer with a rubber stamp. Instead, you are directed to a biometric kiosk. Imagine if you are James, an American business traveler who frequently visits Europe. In the old system, James could flip through his passport to count his days to ensure he did not exceed the 90-day limit in a 180-day period. In 2026, the EES kiosk performs this calculation in milliseconds using facial recognition and 4 fingerprint scans. If the system calculates that your previous trips have put you over the limit by even 12 hours, the gate will not open. There is no longer room for human discretion or explaining the situation to a friendly officer. The computer is the gatekeeper. This makes staying updated on your own travel math more critical than ever. You need to know your EES status before you even book your flight. The EES works in tandem with ETIAS, the European Travel Information and Authorization System. By 2026, this system is fully mature. It is a digital link to your passport that is valid for 3 years, or until your passport expires. But here is the detail that catches many Americans off guard. The biometric data captured at the EES kiosk must match the data provided in your ETIAS application. If you have had facial surgery, significant weight changes, or even certain types of scarring since you applied for your ETIAS, the facial recognition software at the border might flag a mismatch. Historical trends show that biometric errors are becoming a leading cause of secondary inspection delays. To stay updated, you must ensure that your digital profile is as current as your physical appearance. We are also seeing the rise of the One ID initiative by IATA, which aims to create a completely paperless travel experience. In 2026, some airlines are trialing programs where your physical passport is only needed as a backup. Your digital identity, verified through biometrics at your first point of departure, becomes your token for the entire journey. You walk through the airport, onto the plane, and through foreign customs without ever taking your passport out of your pocket. While this sounds like a convenience, it adds a new layer of rules. You must now stay updated on which airports and airlines support this digital identity, and what happens if the system goes offline. If you arrive at a biometric-only gate in London, but the system cannot pull your record from the US Department of State's cloud, you must be prepared to revert to traditional documentation immediately. This shift toward biometrics and digital authorizations means that the rules of travel are no longer just about visas. They are about data integrity. You need to ensure that your name on your airline ticket matches your passport to the letter, including middle names and suffixes. In the past, a minor typo might be overlooked by a human agent. In 2026, the automated ES and ESHA systems will reject a ticket that says John Doe if the passport says Jonathan Doe. This is the granularity required for travel in the current year. But even if your biometrics are perfect and your ESHAs is approved, there is another trap that catches thousands of Americans every year: the transit visa. Most people assume that if they never leave the airport, they do not need to worry about the rules of the country they are landing in. This is a dangerous misconception. In 2026, certain countries have implemented transit without visa, or TWV programs that have highly specific requirements, such as staying within a specific terminal or having a confirmed onward flight within a 6-hour window. If your layover is 7 hours instead of 6, you might suddenly find yourself requiring a full transit visa that you do not have. This leads us to an even more complex and often invisible layer of travel rules. Have you ever considered what happens if your flight is diverted to a country you never intended to visit? Or what happens if you have a self-transfer flight where you have to collect your luggage and recheck it? In those cases, you are technically entering the country even for just 30 minutes. If you do not meet the entry requirements for that accidental destination, you are in a legal vacuum. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to break down the transit trap and the self-transfer secret. I will show you how to audit your flight itinerary to ensure you aren't accidentally committing an immigration violation during a 3-hour layover. We will also explore the proof of onward travel requirement, which is being enforced with newfound digital precision in 2026. The transit trap is one of the most sophisticated ways an American traveler can find themselves in legal or logistical limbo, often without ever intending to enter a foreign country. In 2026, the distinction between being airside and landside has become a digital hard line that can end a trip before it truly begins. Let us look at a case study involving a traveler named Marcus. Marcus is flying from New York to Bali, Indonesia, with a long layover in Manila, Philippines. Marcus has done his research on Indonesia and knows his entry requirements there, but he assumes that because he is only in Manila for 6 hours and never plans to leave the airport, he does not need to worry about Philippine regulations. However, Marcus's flight from New York arrives at Terminal 1, and his departing flight to Bali leaves from Terminal 3. In many global hubs in 2026, moving between terminals requires you to exit the secure airside area, clear immigration, take a shuttle or train through a public area, and then re-clear security and immigration to enter the new terminal. The moment Marcus steps into that immigration line to move between terminals, he is technically entering the Philippines. If the Philippines has recently updated its e-travel registration requirements or health declarations for 2026, and Marcus does not have the necessary QR code or documentation, he is essentially an undocumented entrant. Potential outcomes in this scenario include being detained in the transit area or, more likely, being forced onto the next flight back to the United States because he cannot legally enter the country to reach his connecting gate. To avoid the transit trap, you must perform a terminal-level audit of your itinerary. This is a step-by-step process that goes beyond looking at the city name. You need to look at the airport code and the specific terminal numbers for your arrival and departure. If they are different, you must search for the airport's official transit guide. In 2026, most major airports like London Heathrow, Dubai International, and Singapore Changi have dedicated pages explaining whether a terminal change requires a landside transfer. If it does, You must treat that layover as a full entry into the country and comply with every single visa and authorization rule, as if you were staying for a month. This leads us directly into the self-transfer secret, which is the single biggest risk for budget-conscious travelers using third-party booking sites. Imagine if a traveler named Elena finds an incredible deal on a flight from Chicago to Casablanca, Morocco. To save $800, the booking site combines a flight on a major U.S. carrier to London Gatwick with a separate flight on a low-cost carrier from London to Casablanca. This is what the industry calls a self-transfer or a non-protected connection. In 2026, the historical trends of these budget-friendly options have shown a massive spike in denied boardings for Americans. The reason is simple but devastating. Because these are two separate tickets, the first airline is only responsible for getting Elena to London. They do not see her Morocco flight in their system. Consequently, the airline at O'Hare will check Elena's documentation as if London is her final destination. Furthermore, because these airlines do not have an interline agreement, Elena's checked luggage will not be moved automatically. She must clear UK border force, collect her bags from the carousel, walk through customs, and then go to the departures hall to check in for her second flight. In 2026, this means Elena must have a valid ETIAS or UK electronic travel authorization. If she lacks this because she thought she was just transiting to Morocco, the airline in Chicago will refuse to let her on the first plane. The airline's computer system will flag that she is traveling to the UK without the required digital authorization, and the fact that she has a second ticket to Morocco is legally irrelevant to them. To navigate this, you must look for the small print on booking confirmations. If you see phrases like baggage not checked through or self-transfer, you are assuming a massive amount of regulatory responsibility. You are not just a passenger. You are effectively acting as your own travel agent and compliance officer. You must ensure you have the legal right to enter every single country where you are switching planes on a self-transfer. In 2026, with the high-speed processing of biometric data, these hidden entries are tracked more closely than ever. If you clear immigration in London on a self-transfer and then fail to show up for your second flight, your exit record may not be closed properly, which can lead to you being flagged as an overstaying visitor in the entire European system. Another layer of this masterclass involves the proof of onward travel, which has evolved into a high-tech verification process in 2026. For years, travelers could sometimes get by with a verbal promise that they were leaving the country, or perhaps a printed itinerary that hadn't been fully paid for. Those days are gone. Border agencies in countries like Thailand, New Zealand, and Costa Rica now use API links to global reservation systems. When you present your passport at a kiosk, the system automatically searches for a matching outbound flight record associated with your name and passport number. Imagine a case study involving Chloe, a digital nomad who flies from San Francisco to San Jose, Costa Rica, on a one-way ticket. She plans to stay for 2 months and then decide whether to go to Panama or Nicaragua. When she reaches the check-in counter at SFO, the agent's screen turns red. The system does not see a return or onward flight within the 90-day window allowed for U.S. tourists. Chloe argues that she will buy her ticket later, but historical trends show that airlines are now strictly enforcing the return to origin liability. If Costa Rica rejects Chloe because she lacks proof of onward travel, the airline is forced to fly her back to San Francisco and pay a heavy fine. To protect themselves, the airline will simply refuse to board her. In 2026, the only way to satisfy this requirement is to have a verified PNR, or passenger name record, for a flight leaving the country. Some travelers attempt to use onward ticket services that rent a legitimate ticket for 24 hours. While these are often real tickets, border agents are becoming increasingly aware of these patterns. If you are caught using a fraudulent or ghost ticket, the potential outcomes include an immediate visa cancellation and a multi-year ban from the country. The step-by-step best practice is to always have a fully refundable ticket or a confirmed low-cost flight to a neighboring country already booked and visible in the global distribution system before you reach the airport. Staying updated on these transit and onward travel rules requires a shift in mindset. You cannot just look at the map. You have to look at the logic of the aviation industry and the digital borders they have built. You must ask yourself, will my feet touch the ground outside of a secure transit zone? Will my bags be handled by a human or a machine between flights? Does the country I am entering require me to prove I am leaving before they let me in? These questions are the foundation of travel security in 2026. But even if you have your transit sorted and your onward ticket confirmed, There is a new frontier of travel rules that is catching a specific demographic of Americans, the work-from-anywhere crowd. In 2026, the lines between being a tourist and being a digital nomad have been legally solidified. And if you say the wrong thing to a border agent about your laptop or your remote job, your vacation could turn into a legal nightmare. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to dive into the digital nomad trap. I will show you why your remote work policy at your US company might actually be an invitation to an immigration violation abroad, and the specific keywords you must never use when crossing a border with a laptop. We will also look at the rise of the remote work visa and why it might be the most expensive mistake you ever make. The digital nomad trap is a phenomenon that has caught thousands of American professionals off guard in 2026, largely because the terminology used by HR departments in the United States often contradicts the legal definitions used by immigration officers abroad. For years, the prevailing wisdom among remote workers was to simply enter a country on a tourist visa or a visa-free waiver, keep their head down, and do their work from a laptop in a cafe. However, in 2026, the global landscape has shifted toward highly specialized digital nomad visas, and with that shift comes a massive increase in enforcement. The historical trends of the last 3 years show that countries like Spain, Japan, and Italy have invested heavily in digital tracking and social media monitoring to identify individuals who are effectively living and working in their territory without the proper authorization. Imagine a traveler named Leo. Leo is a senior software architect for a tech firm based in Austin, Texas. In mid-2026, Leo decides to take advantage of his company's work-from-anywhere policy and heads to Kyoto, Japan, for what he considers a 3-month working vacation. Japan launched its official 6-month digital nomad visa in 2024, which by 2026 is a fully mature program with strict income and insurance requirements. When Leo arrives at Kansai International Airport, the immigration officer asks him the standard question about the purpose of his visit. Leo, wanting to be honest and thinking his remote work is perfectly legal under his US contract, says he is there for a mix of tourism and to catch up on some remote work for his company back home. In that single sentence, Leo has committed an immigration violation. In the eyes of Japanese law in 2026, if you are performing any activity that constitutes labor, even if that labor is for a foreign entity and paid into a foreign bank account, you are working. By attempting to enter on a tourist waiver while admitting to working, Leo is technically misrepresenting his intent. The potential outcomes of this interaction are stark. Leo could be denied entry immediately, his passport could be flagged for future travel to Japan, and he could be banned from the country for several years. This is why the specific keywords you use at a border are a matter of legal survival. To stay updated on these rules, you must understand the legal distinction between a business visit and remote work. Most American citizens assume that because they are not taking a job from a local citizen, they are not working. However, international law in 2026 generally defines a business visit as an activity where you are representing your company in meetings, attending a conference, or negotiating a contract. It is an activity where the value is generated through interaction with the local market. Remote work, or digital nomadism, is the act of performing your daily job duties from a different geographic location. In 2026, over 60 countries have created a specific visa class for this. If a country has a digital nomad visa and you choose to enter as a tourist instead while still working, you are bypassing their tax and social security systems, and they have the technological tools to find out. Step by step, before you bring your laptop across a border, you must perform a labor law audit of your destination. You start by visiting the embassy website of the country you are visiting and searching specifically for digital nomad visa or remote work visa. If such a visa exists, you must assume that the tourist entry requirements strictly forbid any form of remote labor. You should also check for self-employment or freelance regulations. In many European countries under the 2026 EISA system, the digital authorization specifically states that it is for tourism and business travel only. If you are found to be using that authorization to run a full-time remote operation, you are in violation of the terms of your entry. Let us look at another case study. The tax residency trap. Imagine Sarah, an American freelance graphic designer who decides to spend 6 months in Spain. She knows that as an American, she can stay for 90 days in the Schengen area. So she decides to border hop by going to Morocco for a few days and then returning to Spain to reset her clock. In 2026, this strategy is practically impossible due to the entry/exit system, or EES, which we discussed earlier. The system tracks her cumulative days perfectly. But the bigger issue is the 183-day rule, a common threshold in international tax law. If Sarah stays in Spain for more than 183 days in a calendar year, the Spanish government may consider her a tax resident. Even if her clients are all in the United States and her money never touches a Spanish bank, Spain may claim a right to tax her global income. In 2026, many countries have updated their data sharing agreements with the United States. While the foreign earned income exclusion exists, the paperwork and potential for double taxation or Social Security contributions can be a financial disaster. This is why applying for the official digital nomad visa is often the safer, albeit more expensive, route. These visas often come with specific tax benefits or simplified reporting requirements that protect you from being accidentally classified as a full tax resident. The most expensive mistake you can make is assuming that your company's HR policy is a legal shield. Many U.S. companies tell their employees they can work from abroad for short periods, but they often do not realize that the employee's presence in a foreign country can create what is known as a permanent establishment for the company itself. This means your employer could technically be liable for corporate taxes in that foreign country just because you are sitting there with a company laptop. In 2026, foreign tax authorities have become much more aggressive in pursuing these claims. If your company finds out you have exposed them to international tax liability because you didn't follow the local visa rules, the potential outcomes include immediate termination of your employment. Furthermore, we must address the hardware audit. In 2026, customs agents in countries like Australia, Canada, and even parts of the European Union have the authority to inspect electronic devices. While this is rare for the average tourist, if you are arriving with multiple monitors, professional-grade recording equipment, or specialized hardware, you are signaling to the agent that you are there to work. If your visa says tourist, but your luggage says mobile office, you will be pulled into secondary inspection. You must be prepared to explain the presence of that equipment and how it relates to your legal status. Staying updated in this environment requires a professional level of due diligence. You cannot rely on a blog post from 2023 that says, "Nobody cares if you work from a cafe in Bali." In 2026, they do care. The Indonesian government, for instance, has implemented a specialized B211A visa specifically for these types of stays, and they actively monitor co-working spaces. To stay compliant, you should use official resources like the Global Nomad Guide or the specific long-stay sections of foreign ministry websites. These sites will give you the exact income thresholds, often requiring proof of earning between $3,000 and $5,000 per month to qualify for the legal right to work remotely. This leads us to a massive, often overlooked requirement that has become a hard wall for many Americans in 2026: the financial proof and bank statement audit. It is no longer enough to just have a valid passport and a ticket. Many countries now require you to prove you have the means of subsistence before they let you pass the first gate. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to break down the specific dollar amounts required by major tourist destinations. I will show you how to generate a certified bank statement that meets international standards, and why a high credit limit on your Visa card might not be enough to satisfy a border agent in 2026. We will also look at the health insurance certificate trap, where a standard U.S. health plan can actually get you deported at the border. The concept of means of subsistence is perhaps the most overlooked entry requirement for American citizens in 2026, largely because for decades, the strength of the U.S. dollar meant that border agents rarely questioned an American's ability to pay for their stay. However, historical trends from the last 3 years show a significant pivot toward algorithmic financial screening. Many countries have faced rising costs in their public infrastructure and are now strictly enforcing the rule that every visitor must prove they have sufficient funds to cover their entire stay, including potential emergencies, without resorting to local social services or illegal employment. Imagine a traveler named Michael. It is August 2026, and Michael is flying into Madrid, Spain, for a 30-day tour of the Iberian Peninsula. Michael is a middle-class American with a steady job and several high-limit credit cards. He assumes that as long as he has his passport and his ISA's authorization, he is fine. However, upon arrival, Michael is selected for a random spot check. The Spanish National Police officer asks Michael for proof of financial means. In 2026, Spain's requirement is approximately €113 per person per day, with a minimum of roughly €1,020 regardless of the length of the stay. For a 30-day trip, Michael is expected to prove he has access to at least €3,390, or roughly $3,700. Michael points to his phone and shows his banking app, but the officer shakes his head. In 2026, a live app view is often considered insufficient because it can be easily manipulated or show funds that are not actually liquid. Michael's credit card limit, while high, is also not always accepted as proof of funds because it represents debt, not realized capital. Because Michael did not have a certified bank statement or a digital verification token from his bank, he is held in a secondary screening area. The potential outcomes of this situation include a formal refusal of entry or, at the very least, hours of stressful international phone calls to his bank to provide the necessary documentation. To avoid this, you must perform a financial audit of your destination's requirements. This is a step-by-step process. First, you must identify the specific daily rate required by your destination country. For many European countries, this rate is tied to a percentage of the national minimum wage and is updated annually. In 2026, you can find these specific numbers on the official websites of the European Commission or the individual foreign ministries. For example, France has different rates depending on whether you have a prepaid hotel booking or are staying with a friend. If you have a hotel, the requirement might be 65 euros per day. If you do not, it could jump to 120 euros. The second step is the preparation of a certified bank statement. In 2026, the gold standard is a statement covering the last 90 days, showing a consistent balance that meets or exceeds the destination's requirements. It must be in English or the local language of the destination. Crucially, you must avoid what immigration officers call window dressing. This is the historical trend where a traveler transfers a large sum of money into their account just 48 hours before their flight. Automated screening systems in 2026 flag these sudden spikes as potential fraud or borrowed money intended to deceive the border agent. They look for stable, long-term liquidity. Now, let us move to the health insurance certificate trap, which has become a major hurdle for Americans in 2026. Many countries, including Turkey, Ecuador, and several Caribbean nations, now require proof of specialized travel health insurance that is valid for the entire duration of your stay. The mistake most Americans make is assuming that their domestic health insurance, such as Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, or even Medicare, provides the necessary coverage. In reality, these plans often have very limited international coverage, and more importantly, they rarely include the two clauses that are mandatory for international entry in 2026: medical evacuation and repatriation of remains. Imagine a traveler named Sophia. Sophia is visiting the Galapagos Islands in Ecuador. Upon landing at Baltra Airport, she is asked to present her health insurance certificate. Sophia shows her U.S. insurance card, which she believes covers her globally. However, the agent points out that the policy does not explicitly mention coverage for air ambulance services from the Galapagos to the mainland, or the repatriation of remains to the United States in the event of a fatality. Without these specific coverages, Sophia's entry is not just delayed, it is legally prohibited. In 2026, the health insurance rules have become even more digitized. Many countries now require you to upload your insurance policy to their portal before you even arrive, where an AI-driven system scans the document for specific keywords. If the system does not see a minimum coverage amount, often set at $50,000 or $100,000, it will not issue the necessary entry QR code. Historical trends show that many American insurance providers do not issue the specific visa letter required by foreign governments. You must proactively contact your insurance provider and ask for a summary of benefits specifically for international travel. If they cannot provide a document that explicitly lists your name, your policy number, the coverage dates, and the repatriation clause, you must purchase a dedicated international travel insurance policy. These policies are not just for your health, they are a legal entry document. In 2026, some countries like Qatar have mandated that visitors purchase insurance from a specific list of government-approved local providers. This is a crucial detail to check on the State Department's country information page. If you show up with a world-renowned American insurance policy, but the country requires you to have a policy from a local provider that costs $25, you will be forced to buy it at the airport before you can clear customs. The depth of this requirement extends to the physical or digital format of the proof. In 2026, you should always carry a physical printout of your insurance certificate and your financial proof, even if you have them on your phone. If your phone dies, or if the local cellular network at the airport is down, you have no way to prove your compliance. Border agents in 2026 are working under high pressure high-volume conditions, and are unlikely to wait for your device to reboot or for you to find a charging station. This systematic approach to financial and health documentation is what separates a professional traveler from a tourist. It is about understanding that the entry process is a series of data points that must align perfectly. If any one point, your daily fund count, your liquidity history, or your insurance evacuation limit, is out of alignment, the entire entry can be denied. This is the new reality of 2026, where the border is a digital filter designed to ensure that every visitor is financially and medically self-sufficient. But what if your finances are perfect and your insurance is ironclad, yet you are still turned away because of the physical state of your passport? Many Americans don't realize that a single water stain or a loose thread on the cover can render their most important document invalid. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to explore the passport forensics trap. I will show you exactly how border agents inspect your document for damage you might not even notice, the secret rules about the number of blank pages you actually need for a multi-country trip, and the 2026 update on the soft expiration dates that can catch you off guard, even if your passport is years away from truly expiring. We will also dive into what to do if you are a dual citizen and which passport you should actually use for the most seamless experience. The passport forensics trap is a silent trip killer that has become significantly more prevalent in 2026 due to the hypersensitivity of high-speed biometric scanners. Historical trends show that while a human border agent might have overlooked a slightly frayed edge or a minor ink smudge in the past, the automated e-gates and kiosks of today are programmed with zero tolerance for document degradation. Imagine a traveler named David who is heading to Singapore. David is a meticulous planner. He checked his expiration date and his ESHA status, and everything is green. However, David's passport once sat in a backpack during a humid hike in Oregon, causing a very slight, almost imperceptible wave in the polycarbonate data page. When David places his passport on the glass at the Changi Airport e-gate, the scanner cannot achieve a perfect flush seal against the page, because the laser cannot read the machine-readable zone without reflection interference from that slight warp. The gate remains closed. David is pulled aside for a manual inspection. The officer looks at the document under a forensic UV light and notices that the security thread in the binding has a single loose fiber. In the 2026 security environment, this is classified as a mutilated document. David is not just delayed. He is deemed to be traveling with an invalid document. The potential outcomes of this scenario include immediate deportation on the next available flight and a permanent record in the international database that his document was rejected for tampering or damage. To avoid the forensics trap, you must perform a multi-point physical audit of your passport every time you book a flight. This is a step-by-step technical inspection. First, hold the passport by the cover and fan the pages. Every single page must be firmly attached to the binding. If a single page feels loose or if there is a gap in the stitching, the document is compromised. Second, inspect the data page, specifically the laminate or polycarbonate layer. Look for any signs of delamination, which often looks like a tiny air bubble or a silvery sheen at the edges. This is where moisture enters the document and is a primary reason for rejection at the border. Third, check for unofficial markings. Historical case studies have shown travelers being denied entry because of souvenir stamps from places like Machu Picchu or Checkpoint Charlie. In 2026, these are considered unauthorized alterations that invalidate the security features of the page. Next, we must address the blank pages requirement, which has become a math-heavy hurdle for frequent flyers. Most American citizens believe that as long as there is a little white space left, they are fine. In 2026, countries like South Africa, Namibia, and China have moved to a strict 2 to 4 page requirement. This means 2 to 4 entirely blank, unstamped visa pages. The pages labeled amendment at the back of your US passport do not count. Imagine if Isabella is traveling through a series of countries in Southeast Asia. She has 5 pages left, which seems plenty. However, her first stop is a country that requires 2 full pages for the entry and exit stamps. Her second stop requires another 2 pages for a physical visa sticker. By the time she reaches her third destination, she only has 1 page left. Even if she has plenty of room for a small stamp, the airline in the previous country will look at the destination's entry rules in their timatic system. If the system says 2 blank pages are required and Isabella has 1, she will be denied boarding. This is because the airline will be fined for delivering a passenger who does not meet the technical document standards of the destination. Step by step, you should count your truly blank pages before every trip. If you have fewer than 6, you should consider a renewal in 2026, even if your passport has years of validity left. The shift toward digital stamps in Europe has provided some relief, but much of the world still relies on physical real estate in your passport book. This leads us to the complex world of dual citizenship. In 2026, millions of Americans hold a second passport, whether through heritage, marriage, or investment. While this offers incredible flexibility, it also creates a unique set of travel rules that, if ignored, can lead to legal complications. The golden rule for dual citizens is that you must always enter and exit the United States on your U.S. passport. This is not just a suggestion. It is a federal requirement. Imagine if Isabella, who also holds an Italian passport, decides to use her Italian document to enter the U.S. because she thinks the line might be shorter, or she just wants to see how the system handles it. The biometric system will immediately flag a mismatch. The system knows that Isabella is a U.S. citizen based on her facial data and fingerprints stored in the Department of Homeland Security's cloud. By attempting to enter as a foreign national, she is technically misrepresenting her status, which can lead to intensive questioning and a formal warning on her record. However, once Isabella arrives in the European Union, she should use her Italian passport. This allows her to bypass the ISHA's authorization and the 90-day stay limit that applies to Americans. But here is where the 2026 tech adds a layer of complexity: the airline ticket. When you book a flight, the passport information you provide to the airline must match the passport you show at the check-in counter. If Isabella books her flight with her U.S. passport number, but then tries to use the Italian e-gates at her destination, the local entry/exit system may not be able to find a matching flight record. The best practice for dual citizens in 2026 is a 3-step protocol. First, use your U.S. passport for the airline booking and for exiting the United States. Second, upon arrival at your destination, present the passport that offers the most favorable entry terms. Third, ensure that the airline's advanced passenger information system has been updated with the passport you intend to use for entry. Most airline apps now allow you to store multiple documents, and you should switch the active document to the one you will use for the specific border you are crossing. We also have to consider the master nationality rule. This is a principle of international law that states a country does not have to recognize your second citizenship if you are currently in the territory of your other citizenship. For an American dual citizen in 2026, this means if you enter a country like Turkey or Iran on that country's passport, and you run into legal or medical trouble, the U.S. Embassy may be limited in the consular assistance they can provide. They are often legally barred from intervening because you are considered a local citizen in the eyes of that government. Staying updated on which passport to use is not just about convenience. It is a decision about your legal protections and your safety net while abroad. The physical state of your passport and the strategy behind your dual citizenship are foundational to your 2026 travel security. But even if your document is pristine and your dual entry strategy is flawless, there is a hidden database that can stop you at the gate based on things you did years ago. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to dive into the inadmissibility trap. I will show you how a minor traffic violation from a decade ago can trigger an automatic rejection in the 2026 digital border systems of countries like Canada and Japan. We will look at the specific criminal records that are now shared globally and the step-by-step process for applying for a waiver of inadmissibility before you even book your flight. We will also explore the rise of the social credit check for travelers and which countries are now looking at your online behavior before granting a visa. The inadmissibility trap is perhaps the most emotionally and financially devastating barrier an American traveler can face in 2026 because it often involves events that occurred decades ago and were long forgotten in a domestic context. In the United States, a minor misdemeanor or a decades-old driving offense might be seen as a relic of youth, but in the digital architecture of 2026 global borders, these records are permanent, searchable, and often disqualifying. Historical trends show that countries like Canada, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand have integrated their immigration databases with the National Crime Information Center and the FBI's Criminal Justice Information Services. This means that a border agent in Vancouver or Tokyo has the same visibility into your record as a state trooper in Ohio. Imagine a traveler named Tyler. It is July 2026, and Tyler is driving across the border from Detroit to Windsor for a weekend trip. Tyler is 45 years old, a successful business owner, and has not had a single legal issue in 20 years. However, in 2016, Tyler was cited for a driving under the influence offense in Michigan. He paid his fines, completed his probation, and moved on with his life. When Tyler reaches the Canadian booth, the officer scans his passport. Within 3 seconds, a red flag appears on the screen. In 2026, Canada's Immigration and Refugee Protection Act treats a single DUI as serious criminality. Under their legal framework, this offense carries a potential maximum sentence of 10 years, which automatically renders Tyler criminally inadmissible to Canada for life, unless he has taken formal steps to resolve it. Tyler is turned around at the border, his weekend is ruined, and he now has a permanent refusal on his international record. To stay updated on these rules, you must understand the concept of legal equivalency. This is the process where a foreign country takes your U.S. offense and maps it onto their own criminal code. If your U.S. misdemeanor is equivalent to a felony or a serious indictable offense in the destination country, you are inadmissible. For American citizens in 2026, the most common triggers are alcohol-related driving offenses, drug possession, including marijuana, which remains a strict disqualifier in Japan and South Korea, regardless of its status in your home state, and any offense involving physical altercations. Step by step, if you have any record at all, you must conduct a criminal record audit before you even look at airfare. The first step is to request an FBI identity history summary, often referred to as a rap sheet. In 2026, this can be done digitally through an FBI-approved channeler, and usually takes less than 48 hours. Once you have this document, you must compare it against the inadmissibility criteria of your destination. For Canada, if your offense occurred more than 10 years ago, you might be deemed rehabilitated by the passage of time, but this is no longer an automatic process for serious offenses. For Japan, historical trends show a zero-tolerance policy. Even a single conviction for a controlled substance from 30 years ago can lead to a lifetime ban from entry. If you find that you are technically inadmissible, you must explore the waiver of inadmissibility process. In 2026, this is a highly technical, paperwork-intensive procedure. For Canada, this involves applying for a temporary resident permit or for criminal rehabilitation. This is not a quick fix. Historical trends show that processing times for rehabilitation applications in 2026 can range from 6 to 12 months and require a mountain of documentation, including court records, police certificates from every jurisdiction where you have lived, and personal references. The potential outcomes of this process are never a certainty. They are discretionary decisions made by consular officers. If you attempt to cross the border while an application is pending, you are signaling to the agent that you are aware of your inadmissibility, which can lead to even stricter scrutiny. Beyond physical records, we must address the 2026 reality of digital footprint auditing and the rise of social credit style checks for travelers. For years, the U.S. government has required visa applicants to provide their social media handles. In 2026, many other nations have adopted this practice for American tourists as part of their electronic authorization systems. When you apply for an e-visa or a digital entry permit for countries like China, the UAE, or even certain Southeast Asian nations, you are often asked to list your handles for platforms like X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Imagine a case study involving a traveler named Chloe. Chloe is a social media influencer who frequently posts her opinions on global politics. In 2026, she plans a trip to a country in the Middle East that has strict laws regarding public speech and the disparagement of the government. Unbeknownst to Chloe, the country's immigration department uses AI-driven sentiment analysis to screen the social media accounts of incoming travelers. They flag a post she made 3 years ago that was highly critical of the country's royal family. When Chloe lands, she is not greeted by a tourist officer but by security personnel. Because her online behavior is seen as a potential threat to national harmony or security, her visa is revoked on the spot. This is the social credit check in action. It is not just about what you have done in a courtroom, it is about what you have said in the digital public square. To stay updated, you must research the local laws regarding speech and digital conduct in your destination. In 2026, countries like Singapore and the UAE have very specific regulations about what constitutes online mischief or cyberslander. If your digital history contains content that violates these local norms, the potential outcomes include being denied a visa before you ever leave the United States, or worse, being detained upon arrival for a crime you committed on your keyboard years prior. The level of data sharing in 2026 is unprecedented. The Five Eyes Alliance, comprised of the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, shares a massive amount of biometric and biographical data. If you are denied entry to Australia for a character concern, that information is almost instantly available to the border agents in London or Auckland. This creates a domino effect where a single mistake or a single controversial post can effectively shut down your ability to travel to a huge portion of the developed world. To protect your travel future, you must treat your digital and criminal record with the same care you treat your physical passport. You should perform a deep dive into your own online history, removing or archiving content that could be interpreted as high risk in the specific context of your destination. This is not about hiding the truth. It is about understanding that in 2026, every border you cross is a data verification exercise. You are being judged by an algorithm that compares your record and your behavior against a set of national values and security protocols. As we move toward the end of this masterclass, we have to look at one more layer of rules that can derail a trip even after you have cleared immigration and customs. Have you ever considered that the very items in your luggage, things you bought legally in the US, could be considered illegal contraband or biothreats in another country? In the next part of this series, we are going to dive into the customs and biosecurity minefield of 2026. I will show you why a single piece of fruit or a specific brand of prescription vitamins can lead to a $5,000 fine and an immediate visa cancellation. We will also explore the secret world of currency declaration rules and why carrying more than $10,000, even in digital assets, can get you flagged for money laundering at the gate. We will look at the specific 2026 updates on duty-free limits that are being tracked by QR codes on your shopping bags. The biosecurity minefield is the final physical barrier that catches even the most experienced American travelers because it involves items that are perfectly legal and even encouraged within the United States. In 2026, countries with isolated ecosystems, most notably Australia, New Zealand, and Chile, have moved toward a total surveillance model for organic matter. Historical trends show that the introduction of a single foreign pest or a non-native seed can cause billions of dollars in agricultural damage. To combat this, border agencies in 2026 have deployed hypersensitive AI sniffers that can detect the molecular trace of a piece of fruit that was inside a bag 3 days ago, even if the fruit is gone. Imagine a traveler named Rachel. It is September 2026, and Rachel is flying from Denver to Sydney, Australia. Before she left Colorado, she packed a single organic apple in her carry-on for a snack. She ate the apple over the Pacific, and the core is now in a trash bin in the airplane's galley. However, the organic residue and a few microscopic seeds remained in the side pocket of her backpack. When Rachel reaches the biosecurity line in Sydney, an automated sensor detects the organic signature. Rachel is pulled into a secondary screening. The officer finds the seeds. Under the 2026 Australian Biosecurity Act, this is an automatic infringement. Rachel is issued an on-the-spot fine of over 3,000 Australian dollars. More importantly, because she failed to declare the organic matter on her digital arrival card. The potential outcomes include the immediate cancellation of her visitor visa and an exclusion period from the country. This case study highlights why the declare or dispose rule is the only safe strategy in 2026. If it was ever alive, ever grew, or ever was a plant or animal, you must list it on your form. To stay updated on these biosecurity lists, you must perform a pre-pack audit. This is a step-by-step process. First, go to the official agricultural or biosecurity department of your destination. For Australia, this is the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. For the United States, upon your return, it is the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. These sites provide a live list of prohibited items. In 2026, these lists have expanded to include specific types of wooden souvenirs, dried flowers, and even certain types of hiking boots that have mud from foreign trails. If you are a hiker, you must ensure your gear is professionally cleaned before entry, as foreign soil is now treated as a biothreat. Now, let us look at the medication and vitamin trap, which is perhaps the most legally precarious part of your luggage. In 2026, the global crackdown on controlled substances has extended to medications that millions of Americans use daily. Take the case study of Mark, an American professional with a valid prescription for ADHD medication, specifically a stimulant like Adderall. Mark is traveling to Japan for a business summit. He has his original bottle with the pharmacy label. However, in Japan, stimulants are strictly regulated under the Stimulants Control Act. Without a pre-approved certificate called a Yakin Shimo, bringing these pills into the country is not a customs violation. It is a serious criminal offense. In 2026, the process for obtaining a Yakin Shimo has been digitized through the Visit Japan web portal. You must upload your prescription, a letter from your doctor explaining the medical necessity, and a photo of the medication itself. This must be done at least 2 weeks before your flight. If you show up at Narita Airport without this digital authorization, your medication will be confiscated, and you could be detained for questioning. This rule also applies to common over-the-counter items. Many American brands of sinus medication contain pseudoephedrine, which is a prohibited substance in several countries in 2026, including the United Arab Emirates and Greece. To stay updated, you must check the International Narcotics Control Board's guidelines for every country on your itinerary. The step-by-step rule of thumb for 2026 is that if a pill affects your brain or your nervous system, you need a notarized doctor's letter and a verification of its legality in the destination country. We also have to address the evolution of currency and asset declaration in 2026. The $10,000 rule is a global standard, but the definition of what constitutes $10,000 has shifted. Imagine a traveler named Emily. Emily is traveling to the European Union and is carrying $5,000 in cash and $6,000 worth of gold coins as an inflation hedge. Emily assumes that since her cash is under $10,000, she is safe. She is wrong. In 2026, customs agencies define monetary instruments as the aggregate value of cash, traveler's checks, money orders, and physical bullion. Because Emily's total value is $11,000, she is legally required to declare it. Failure to do so can result in the seizure of the entire amount. Furthermore, the rise of digital assets has introduced a new layer of complexity. While most countries do not yet require you to declare the crypto in your brain or on a cloud exchange, some jurisdictions in 2026 have begun to ask about hardware wallets. If you are carrying a ledger or Trezor device, and the customs agent in a country with strict capital controls like Argentina or Turkey asks you for the value of the assets on that device, lying can be a felony. Historical trends show that customs agencies are increasingly trained to recognize cold storage devices. If you are carrying significant value in digital assets, you must stay updated on the specific MiCA regulations in Europe or the FinCEN requirements in the United States, which are undergoing rapid changes in 2026 regarding the reporting of foreign financial assets. Finally, we must look at the duty-free data link. For decades, the limit on how much alcohol, tobacco, or luxury goods you could bring back was governed by a manual honor system. In 2026, the major duty-free retailers in international hubs like Dubai, Singapore, and London are digitally linked to customs databases. When you scan your boarding pass to buy a high-end Swiss watch or 5 bottles of premium scotch, that purchase is often reported to your destination's customs authority in real time. Imagine you are returning to the United States after a trip to Switzerland. You bought a $12,000 watch at the airport, thinking you would just wear it and not mention it to U.S. Customs and Border Protection. However, when you reach the global entry kiosk, the system already has a flag on your profile from the duty-free data sharing agreement. The agent asks you specifically about the watch. Because you did not declare it, you are now facing a fine that could equal the value of the watch, the loss of your global entry status for life, and a permanent record as a smuggler. The step-by-step best practice in 2026 is to always keep your receipts digitally scanned, and to assume that the government already knows what you bought in the airport. Staying updated on these physical and digital luggage rules is the final layer of your travel masterclass. It requires moving beyond the mindset of what is legal in America and adopting the mindset of a global compliance officer. You must audit your vitamins, your electronics, and your shopping bags with a technical eye. But even with a perfect suitcase and a clean record, there is one final thing that can break your trip: a breakdown in the very systems you rely on to stay updated. In the final part of this masterclass, we are going to look at the 2026 Travel Crisis Protocol. I will show you how to maintain your travel rules intelligence when the internet goes down, what to do if the U.S. State Department's website is offline during a geopolitical emergency, and the secret analog resources every professional traveler carries to ensure they are never truly stranded. We will also reveal the ultimate checklist that brings all 10 parts of this series together. The true test of a masterclass traveler in 2026 is not how well they navigate the systems when they are working, but how they survive when the digital grid fails. We have spent the last 9 parts building a sophisticated understanding of biometrics, e-visas, and automated databases, but the historical trends of the mid-2020s have shown us that these systems are remarkably fragile. Imagine a traveler named Robert. It is November 2026, and Robert is in the middle of a complex multi-city journey through Eastern Europe. Suddenly, a massive regional cyber attack or a routine server failure at a major cloud provider takes the ISHAs and EES systems offline. For the average tourist, this is a catastrophe. They have no physical proof of their authorization, no offline record of their entry date, and no way to prove they are not overstaying their 90-day window. Robert, however, has followed the 2026 Travel Crisis Protocol. The first pillar of this protocol is the analog backup system, often referred to as the red folder strategy. While the world of 2026 has moved toward a paperless existence, the professional traveler knows that a piece of paper does not require a battery or a cellular connection. Your red folder should be a physical, waterproof sleeve containing high-resolution color photocopies of every critical document. This includes the data page of your passport, your physical birth certificate copy, your ISHA's approval page with its unique application number, and your certified bank statements. But the most important analog resource in this folder is the local contact sheet. In 2026, you cannot assume you will have access to Google Maps or your contacts list during a system-wide outage. This sheet must contain the physical address and the landline phone number of the nearest U.S. embassy or consulate, the local emergency services number, and the direct international dialing code for the State Department's 24-hour consular emergency center in Washington, D.C. Step by step, you should also maintain an offline digital vault. This is not just a folder on your phone. It is an encrypted USB drive or a micro SD card that contains scanned versions of all your documents, plus a list of your prescriptions and medical history. In 2026, many border agents carry handheld forensic tools that can read these drives even if the central network is down. If you can present a digital record that matches your physical copies, the potential outcomes of a system outage shift from being detained to being manually processed with a high degree of confidence. This is how you maintain your travel rules intelligence when the very websites we have discussed for the last 9 parts, travel.state.gov, Timatic, and the IATA portal, are suddenly inaccessible. Beyond the hardware, staying updated in a crisis requires an understanding of the tiered alert system within the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, or STEP. Most Americans in 2026 simply sign up and forget about it. However, a deep dive into the system reveals that alerts are categorized. A routine message might cover a local holiday or a minor protest, but a travel alert or a security message indicates a shift in the entry and exit rules of the country. Historical trends show that during periods of civil unrest or health emergencies, countries often flip their border status from open to restricted in a matter of hours. By monitoring the specific language of a STEP alert, you can predict whether a border closure is imminent. If the alert uses phrases like "Americans are encouraged to consider departing while commercial options are available," it is a clear signal that the travel rules are about to become much more restrictive, and your window for a seamless exit is closing. Now we must consolidate the entire 10-part series into the ultimate travel audit framework. This is the checklist that brings every lesson together into a single, repeatable process for every trip you take in 2026. This framework is divided into 4 phases: the pre-booking audit, the documentation phase, the financial and health clearance, and the departure day check. In the pre-booking audit, you first check the State Department's country information page for your destination and every transit point. You verify the passport validity requirement. Is it 3 months, 6 months, or 90 days beyond your departure? You count your blank pages, ensuring you have at least 2 for every country on your itinerary. You check for e-visa or ISHA's requirements and cross-reference them with the airline's Timatic database to ensure there are no hidden transit visa traps for your specific flight path. Moving into the documentation phase, you apply for your authorizations at least 30 days in advance. You perform the forensics check on your physical passport, looking for the delamination or binding issues we discussed in Part 7. If you are a dual citizen, you decide which passport will be your primary document for the trip, and ensure your airline ticket matches that document's data exactly. The financial and health clearance phase involves generating your 90-day certified bank statements to prove your means of subsistence. You contact your health insurance provider to secure a visa letter that explicitly mentions medical evacuation and repatriation. If you are traveling with medication, this is when you apply for your Yakin Shumo or local equivalent. You audit your luggage for biosecurity risks, ensuring your hiking gear is clean and your organic snacks are disposed of before you reach the border. Finally, the departure day check is your last line of defense. You verify that your STEP enrollment is active for the specific dates and cities of your trip. You check the latest travel advisory level to ensure your insurance is still valid for that region. You print your red folder documents and ensure your offline digital vault is in your carry-on, not your checked luggage. You perform a final scan of the IATA Travel Center one more time to catch any rules that may have changed while you were packing. The potential outcomes of following this masterclass framework are transformative. You are no longer a passive participant in the global travel system. You are an informed, resilient traveler who understands the digital and legal architecture of 2026. You are the person who passes through the biometric gates in London while others are held in line. You are the one who knows how to handle a self-transfer layover in Manila without being deported. You are the American citizen who understands that their passport is a legal contract with the world, and you know how to fulfill your end of that contract. As we conclude this deep dive, consider the case study of a traveler named Sarah, whom we met earlier. After failing to board her flight to Morocco because of a UK transit error, Sarah dedicated herself to this masterclass framework. 6 months later, she successfully navigated a 4-country journey through South America and the Caribbean. When a sudden volcanic eruption in Ecuador grounded flights and led to a temporary change in exit permit requirements, Sarah didn't panic. She accessed her red folder, contacted the embassy using the landline number she had printed, and was among the first Americans to be rerouted through a different transit hub. She didn't rely on luck. She relied on a systematic approach to staying updated. The world of 2026 is beautiful, complex, and more accessible than ever. But the price of that access is constant professional-grade vigilance. You now have the tools, the data, and the step-by-step instructions to ensure that your next international adventure is defined by the memories you make, not the rules you missed. But while you now know how to get into a country, do you know how to stay out of trouble once you are there? Global travel rules are just the beginning. The next frontier of travel intelligence is understanding the hidden cultural and legal codes that can lead to an American being fined or even jailed for things that are perfectly normal in the United States. In our next series, we are going to explore the international legal minefield, where we will look at the shocking truth about public behavior, digital privacy, and the common travel mistakes that can lead to an unexpected encounter with a foreign legal system. You won't want to miss the first part, where we look at the secret laws of the world's most popular tourist destinations that are never mentioned in the brochures.